Okay, welcome back. Now we want to talk about another method of perspective, linear perspective, and attaining that sense of foreshortening with something called transferring scale. And we use this when we want to show foreshortening on objects that are the same, that are going back away from us in space, like um, uh, railroad tracks or fence posts or telephone poles, things like that, where in reality they are equally spaced. We know the railroad ties on the railroad tracks are all equally spaced, but in order for them to look like they're going away from us in space, each of the spaces in between the ties has to be getting closer together as they get farther away from us. So this technique of transferring scale is a little trick that can help you to achieve that, and it's a good exercise to go through just so you understand how that works, so that you don't necessarily have to do this exactly as particular with this method, every single time you go to do it. But when you know how it works, then you're able to render it in a freehand way a little bit more easily. So let's go ahead and let's build some railroad ties below an eye level, and then we'll do some above, and we'll do some vertically and some horizontally. Let's start then with getting that eye level going, across at a 90-degree angle to the edge of our paper. And now we're going to start our railroad ties going back to a vanishing point. We're going to do the railroad ties over here, and then we're going to do some telephone poles over here. So let's start, but we'll use the same vanishing point. So let's start that with the vanishing point right here. And then we need something to help us out. We need a construction line to help us out over here on the side to help us line up our triangle. So I'm just going to pull down a vertical very, very lightly on this side to help us out. So now that we have that, now we can use that to line our triangle up with. And we'll come down here and make the railroad tie that's closest to us. I'm just lining up this vertical on the left, and then we're going to pull a horizontal across that is kind of lined up with our vanishing point, but not necessarily has to be. So let's make those railroad ties about that wide, and we can take those back away from us in space. I'm just going to sharpen my pencil real quick. Sorry. I love my electric pencil sharpener, and I love to have it close by. Having a sharp tip is really important. We're going to need some other construction lines to help us out here. We're going to want a construction line that's going to go from the end of that first railroad tie back to the vanishing point, and from the right side of that railroad tie back to the vanishing point. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place our second vanishing point. And the placement of that is up to you, but we're going to use our construction line over here on the left to help us do that. I'm lining that up, and I'm going to make this distance. You don't want this distance, you don't want these to be too close together, because each of these lines is going to get closer and closer together as it goes back to the vanishing point. And if you start with these really close together up here, they're going to be stacked on top of each other by the time you get here. And I want it to be large enough so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to pull a horizontal across right here for my second railroad tie. Now what I'm going to do is I want to bisect each of the lines, the horizontal lines I'm going to make. I want to bisect each one of those. And so in order to do that, I'm going to find the perspective center of this space right here, the space between these two. I'll do that by, again, that really slick magical corner to corner method. Again, this can be very light. That gives me perspective center here. I only need to do that with this first space. Now I'm going to line up my perspective center with my vanishing point, take another construction line back. Zing. And what that does is it bisects this line right here and will bisect each of the lines that we place consecutively. So now this is all I need for the placement of my next railroad tie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw another construction line from the end, it doesn't matter which end, from the end of this first line, line up my straight edge with this center mark. So from there through there, and where it hits this construction line right here, that will be the starting point for my next railroad tie. So right there, that's my starting point. I line up my triangle with that construction line on the left, slide it up to where it meets that point and pull that horizontal over. Oh, wrong pencil. There's my third. See how this space is less than this space? So now I just repeat that over and over again. I go from the line I previously drew through the center of the line I just drew, and where that hits that construction line, that's the starting point for my next horizontal across. So you only have to do this on one side. Some people think, in order to be accurate with it, they've got to do it on both sides. If you're lining up your triangle and using that properly, you don't have to do that. You just, I keep grabbing that wrong pencil. Okay, here we go. There we go. Now, same thing. From the end of the previous line through the center of the line I just drew. Ding, 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 ding. That's the starting point for my next horizontal. Whoops, there goes my red pencil. So now I'm going to flip my triangle this way. Sorry about my head. And pull it across and just continue onward up the rail line. Right there. Slide it up and pull it across. I keep overshooting on this side just a bit. So you want to continue that all the way up as far as you can go to the vanishing point. But now let's do that same thing, but let's go vertically. What if we had telephone poles that are really tall, so they maybe start below the eye level and go above the eye level and then work their way towards the middle. So I'm going to start with a vertical, the telephone pole that's closest to us over here on the right. Pull that down. And let's pull those telephone poles then towards the vanishing point. Here, with more construction lines going from the vanishing point back to the top of the telephone pole. vanishing point to the bottom of the telephone pole. So now I choose the distance between my first one and my second one. That is up to me. But again, you don't want it too close so that they don't get too stacked on top of each other as you get towards the vanishing point. Let's do that about here. Pull that line down. Now I need to find, remember, same as down here, I need to find the center of this perspective center of this space so that I can pull a construction line back to bisect each of those telephone poles as they go towards the vanishing point. So corner to corner. That gives me my perspective center. And then from the vanishing point, align that with the center and pull a construction line back. That bisects that line. And then same thing, you can go from either end of that first pole through the center of the second pole, back to that construction line right there. And where that intersects, that's the starting point for our next vertical, our next telephone pole coming down. And repeat from the one you previously drew, through the center of the one you just drew, where it intersects that construction line, that becomes the starting point for that next vertical coming down. And you just continue that all the way up. Don't get this eye level confused with this perspective center line. Okay, those are two separate things. So again, this is a very calculated way that you can get that foreshortening working for you on multiple objects. And it gives you an idea of the rate of, how that works. There are other methods. You can use some other vanishing points on the eye level, but this is a quick one. So go ahead and complete a set of railroad tracks and a set of telephone poles on your sheet, and we'll go from there.